Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Tatiana Show. Today is August 15th, 2017, and I'm broadcasting to you live from my apartment in New Jersey. It's been a really weird week. A lot of sad news coming out of Charlottesville, so that's been on my mind. And it's quite sad to see things devolving in the way that they have. I'm very sorry for everything that's happening down there. So I don't know what's the scoop, but all the news is still coming in. I saw this Vice special this morning about Chris Cantwell. I don't know what happened there. Seems like he went off the rails. But you know, I just hope that we don't continue to devolve. And I think it's important to have discussions instead of fights. So in that spirit, we have the Tatiana Show, and we don't have too much controversy today. Maybe a little bit here and there. But we've got Coley coming on later on from Muslims for Liberty. And our first guest today is a repeat guest. It's my good friend, Kingsley Edwards, whose father has been facing some problems with the legal system. I'd like to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about his engagement with crypto. He's one of my early crypto friends, in addition to my early liberty-loving friends. So welcome back to the show today, Kingsley. How's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So fill me in on what's the latest for people that are not, let's talk about your dad, and then we'll end with something like a little bit more upbeat, because
Okay.
I think the dad thing is really important. People watch this show know that I'm a big supporter of Ross Ulbricht, and in general, not a supporter of the prison industrial complex or the drug war. But Ross isn't the only victim, and you've been dealing with this struggle as a sort of result of the drug war since you were a little kid. So for people that are not familiar with the story, why don't you give us a little bit of background?
Okay, yeah. So in the 90s, my father, he was involved, with some dealing of drugs and stuff like that. He was young, and this was in Florida back in the day when kind of cocaine was rampant, and there's a lot of money to be made. So he got busted for a small amount of cocaine in the 90s, and he got just an outrageous sentence over 60 years for less than the news headlines say was it a tablespoon of cocaine, which was just worth like less than $800. So he's currently serving as almost 25 years now in prison of a 60-year sentence. And so, yeah, we've just been, it's obviously like affected our family quite a bit. I pretty much grew up without a father. The only, I remember when I was younger, we were able to hang out a little bit, but over the years, it's been mostly just phone calls and just having to visit him actually at the prison in Florida. So it's just, we're trying to get the word out. Obviously, the crime doesn't fit the punishment. It's ridiculous. That same year that he was busted, another guy, killed his, I forget if it was I think he killed his father or someone else. Anyway, he's out of prison. Constantly my dad sees more and more people that have done much worse and also violent crimes get out of prison while he's just kind of stuck in there rotting away. So we're making some progress, but it's been quite the struggle.
Well, 60 years is essentially a life sentence.
Right.
How much, do you know how much, first of all, I'm very sorry. I mean, I hope you know how repugnant I find this whole story to be. So he's been in that prison now for 60 years. Do you know how much it costs every year to keep him in there? Because
yeah, it's
aside from the moral question, I mean, it's just not even fiscally responsible to keep these people in prison for such a long time.
Right, and that's one of the points that that we bring up is it costs about $30,000 a year to keep him locked away, and so for the taxpayers, it just doesn't make any sense. Like I said, he's nonviolent, and it just just the drug war, and especially at that time, was just at such a ridiculous place, and there's so much hype around it, and there's a lot of talk from DC of how we're going to get tough on drugs and all this kind of stuff, and yeah, sad situation.
So what is, I think also what's interesting is that a lot of people have come out to ask for clemency for your father. and that hasn't been effective. And I mean, isn't it like the prosecuting attorney has come out asking for him to be released? So tell us a little bit more about that, and why hasn't that been effective?
Yeah, we're making some progress. It is pretty ridiculous. I mean, pretty much everyone that was involved against my father in court are now saying that, okay, maybe that was too much time, or the crime doesn't fit the time doesn't fit the crime. So last year, actually, we met with some representatives in Tallahassee, and they asked us. We thought we were really we thought that we were going to be able to get him out sooner because of just the way the conversations were going. And they mentioned that okay, well, we want to we had the news show up and everything, and they mentioned that okay, we want to make sure that we have a program in place so that when he does get out, we'll have some sort of checks and balances as far as what he's up to and kind of all this stuff. So we looked into a bunch of programs, and we sent them basically the package that they asked for, and then basically communication just went dead silent from their end. So since then, more recently, my aunt has met up with one of the state reps, Heather Fitzenhagen, who is a Republican in Florida, and she is putting together some sort of legislation that will potentially help my father. And she's also going to be bringing it up to the governor as well. And another point I wanted to bring up, just in regard to how much wasteful spending it is just to keep him locked up and others. So the way it works is there's a small group of people that go through basically a stack of paperwork in Florida, and they look through each case and they see whether this person deserves to be let out or not before their time is served. And that their yearly budget is like, I forget, it's like $3 million or $8 million, and it's comprised of like just a couple people in an office, and they have a backlog of like their backlog is like 3 or 4 years right now. So he applied years ago, and there's still so there's such a backlog that there's still his case is still far from even being seen yet. So we're trying to expose that that there's this state budget for basically this group of people that aren't doing very much. So obviously showing the inefficiencies of the state, and then the yearly cost to just keep them locked up as well.
That's terrifying on many levels. I don't know what to say about it. I'm sort of like floored by the fact that you have people that are actually going, because think about all the poor slobs that don't have anybody advocating for them. Mm-hmm. Their chances of ever getting out are zero. I mean, your dad at least has people that are advocating for him, and that also does nothing. Do you think that there's, you mentioned that Congresswoman, Senator that you were working with, the government official, was a Republican. Do you think that there's any sympathy from either side that sort of falls? Like, do you think that Democrats are usually better about criminal justice reform, or do you think that Republicans are because they've got, like the Christian thing, because sometimes Christians don't like prisons and stuff? So what do you think? Is there any kind of like appeal to be made there, or do you consider this to be a bipartisan issue?
Yeah, more than likely, Democrats or liberals are more interested in kind of hearing us out and helping the cause. But this has been kind of a new thing that's just come up in the past recent weeks, and I think the fact that she is a Republican can help us, because the current governor, Rick Scott, is a Republican, and just seeing it from that point of view is, I feel, beneficial for us to get the word out and to speak to the governor. The governor knows of my father's situation, and really it's going to require him to take action to have him released. But it's it's been a struggle. I mean, he has a supporting family. He already has, like, he can have my family has businesses in Florida that he'll be working with, and he's a super smart guy. Like, don't get me wrong, like he got into the maybe the wrong business, especially for the time, but he's a very smart guy, and I've actually learned a lot from him since we've been talking more especially in my adult years, we've really connected on a lot of levels, just in regards to, business and just other things. So, but yeah, we're, I feel like I said, we're making progress, maybe small progress, but we can't give up. We really don't, we can't just let them rot away for years and years.
No, it makes me sad for all the other people though that are also suffering. Obviously Ross is doing. They just moved him to the max security prison in Florence, Colorado. Is your father in a state or a federal prison?
It's a state prison. It's a private prison as well, which is also pretty interesting. Just hearing because he's been in both state-run and private prisons, and actually, years back when I first started getting into libertarianism. I always thought that, I guess before, really looking at the anarchist viewpoint, that, private prisons, for-profit prisons are obviously, there's always some elements of greed that are gonna take place, whether it's private or public. But actually the private prison that he's in is actually much better than the state-run prisons in Florida. So it's been interesting to kind of hear his stories from actually being inside and the differences from both.
Yeah, I've heard that the problem with the prison market and the idea of privatization being better is that there's basically, one main customer. So it's like it doesn't have the checks and balances from an optional market, I also heard that the federal prisons are the best.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But I don't think any of them are particularly good. I was really disturbed by all the children that had been adversely affected through their parents being locked up. And I mean, you seem to have come out okay, but I don't know. I mean, I hope that something can be done. What could people do right now to help your dad?
So we have a petition going. We have, I think, we have over now like 1,200 signers on change.org. So these help us. So when we present our position to the governor and others, it's just kind of a backing of showing like, hey, we have all these people that agree with us. That the crime doesn't fit the time doesn't fit the crime, and so that's one way. Also, it's through doing shows like yours and just even posting on social media. We've had quite a few people that have reached out to us that have connections with the media in Florida, and also people who are connected with politicians in Florida as well. So yeah, any kind of connections like that, or people that can be introduced, is always beneficial for what we're trying to do.
Great. So what's the website where people can find out more?
It's michaeledwardsfreedomfund.com, and that kind of goes through the stories, and then we have a whole bunch of news articles. Some have been featured in USA Today. But a lot of it's been mostly, local news that's picked up his story.
Well, local news is important. You've got to get the people in the community activated.
Right.
So we'll be sure to post that link in the show. And what's been going on with all your crypto stuff? What's happening? You were doing a lot of gaming and crypto, and then you what's happening? Tell us the latest.
Yeah, so in 2013, we built a platform where people can play against each other in popular video games for Bitcoin. And then, so we were building on that. We raised some money on that concept. But unfortunately, we saw Bitcoin skyrocket to 1,000 and then kind of slowly drift downwards for a while. So interest level kind of tapered off for a bit. So we were a little early to the scene, but but we learned a lot, and always exciting to be in the crypto space. In late 2015, we actually my company pivoted, and we started working with casino groups directly to provide esports events and technology on the B2B level. So enabling people basically to gamble for on professional matches or even play against each other for money. So since then, we kind of had to stop really focusing on crypto and really focus on the casino side. And we've been working with the regulators here locally in Nevada and elsewhere to make esports, which is professional players playing video games, basically legal, for gambling. And then more recently this year, we got acquired by a larger company, and they were luckily, yeah, we have a lot of common, basically the common goals, and they were interested in crypto as well. So we're actually building a crypto platform with them, and it's we're going to be launching it later this year. So we're really excited about that. Excited to be back in the crypto space, and I'm glad to see Bitcoin. Not even Bitcoin at such high levels, but not even for the money. I mean, it's exciting that Bitcoin's making a lot of people good money, especially the early believers or adopters. But just the fact that what we know that crypto represents for humanity, globally. So
yeah, well, for sure. Yeah, it's very nice to see all that going up. Why won't they let esports be gambleable in Vegas? I mean, everything else is legal. What's
well,
their
yeah,
problem?
it is now.
So like a cartel thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting just learning about the way that just regulators work. There's definitely just with everything. There's always like these safeguards that they put in place that are supposed to protect the public, but in reality, they just help big business. And for Nevada and Las Vegas specifically, that's the large casinos. So yeah, it's actually legal now. So we've been kind of working side by side with the regulators for the past year and a half. But it's been an interesting process going through that and learning about all this stuff on the gambling side. As far
I
as
don't think you can give me an honest answer, but did you find the regulators to be reasonable?
they are pretty open here, but it's just a matter of how slow the process is to make things or to kind of change the system. But yeah, we're making progress. I mean, people are able to do to basically play against others for money and bet. We got like a lawnmower in the background. So what is that?
Oh no, they're installing a camera because somebody keeps stealing stuff in the building. Sorry,
Okay.
I didn't realize you could hear that. I'm not installing the camera. I'm here with you.
No problem.
Okay, so what's the name of the company? How or is this still top secret?
No. Yeah, the name of the company is Unicorn, and they have a licensed esports book in Australia and the UK, and we're going to be announcing some really big ventures coming up here soon. So the company's website's Unicorn, spelled kind of strange, unikrn.com, and then actually our crypto site is unicoingold.com. So
cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Well, that's awesome. I hope that you keep me posted on everything that's going on, and let me know next time you're in New York.
Okay.
I feel like we keep missing each other everywhere we go, but one more time, what's your father's michaeledwardsfreedomfund.com, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
And then Unicoin? No, how is this spelled?
Yeah. Unicoingold.com is the crypto site. UNIKOIN gold.com.
Gold? Like gold or gold?
No, gold, like precious metal.
Okay. Okay, good. Very cool. Well, it was nice talking to you, and good luck with everything. I'll see you soon, okay?
All right. Thanks, Tatiana. See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later. So before we bring on our next guest, who I'm pretty excited to hang with, we're hanging together in PorcFest. I just wanted to give a quick thanks to our sponsors. Kirk Phillips at the Bitcoin CPA has been fixing all of my problems, my tax lack of organization and everything, and he's been wonderful. So if you guys have any kind of Bitcoin tax stuff that you need to work out, Kirk is the man. Crypto Compare, those guys are awesome. They have a site. If you go to cryptocompare.com, you can look at all the different cryptos, get all the latest information. They've also got some good tweets. I've been retweeting their news. Freeross.org, always a supporter of my good friend. Find out more about how to support the family, and you can even shop on their Amazon link, and then you get a little, whatever you buy on Amazon, they get a little portion of that. Third Key Solutions, Pamela Morgan's company. Then I want to give a shout out to my favorite podcasts, sovereigntech.com and sexandsciencehour.com, both featuring Brian Sovereign And Stephanie also comes onto Sovereign Tech sometimes. But Sex and Science Hour is super fun. So if you guys want something that's kind of liberty but not more bad news about what's happening in the world, I would go to sexandsciencehour.com. Shout out to Josh over at Voltoro. Hello, Voltoro. If you want to get Bitcoin for gold, I love Josh's site. I love Josh. I don't love that he hasn't been on the show lately, but he's been sick and stuff. Maybe he's not sick, but I think he's sick of working is what I think. But anyway, and also don't forget cryptomediahub.com, my company, if you want to do marketing or PR in the Bitcoin space. And my makeup is Beauty Counter. So if you guys like makeup or stuff like that, and you want to buy stuff for girls, there's a link below. And one last thing I want to say, shout out to Dana over at libertycraze.com. He's been printing some shirts for me. So if you guys need shirts and you like Liberty, go to libertycraze.com. But our next guest, meaning my next guest, because there's no hour since Josh isn't here, is Will Coley, who is the founder of Muslims for Liberty. Are you the founder, Will, or are you the president? How does that work? We're going to find out more.
I'm one of the founders.
I see. Okay, so first of all, welcome to the show. This is your first time, right?
Yeah.
Very cool. I like your hippie. Like you've got the dark side of the moon. You've got the Grateful Dead shirt. I'm digging it. We need a little bit more peace today. So tell me, I know some of your background, but I know my audience doesn't. And I'd like a refresher course. Tell me a little bit about how you came to be involved in Muslims for Liberty.
Well, it kind of fell in my lap, I guess you could say. I became Muslim about 10 years ago, and I went to an...
Why? That's my question. That's the first thing, because people are like, "Oh, who's this white guy? He's Muslim." Like, why? What happened? Were you like, forget Jesus?
Well, it's such a long and odd and esoteric story in some ways. I've been a theology nerd basically my whole life. Taught Sunday school classes when I was a kid. So you believed in God always? Yeah. Since you're a kid?
I
was a youth minister when I was a teenager. You know those tent revivals they like to make fun of on television? I used to preach in those when I was a teenager, you know, complete with like people falling on the ground and wiggling around with their arms in the air. Like I went to a holy roller church. I was a youth minister in one for quite a few years.
Wow.
And then the failures of the church, seeing the failures of the churches that I was going to, seeing really blatant open racism, you know, like the use of racial epithets and stuff by pastors, and you know, I just became really disillusioned with that whole thing, and I started working in nightclubs, started doing music, working as a DJ in clubs in Tennessee, and then I moved to Florida, and I was doing it down there, and but I always kept this this odd hobby that I'd had since I was a teenager of reading religious texts. You know, when I was in 8th grade, instead of like reading like some teenage magazine or, you know, something about cars, I was in the back of the classroom reading the Tao Te Ching instead of paying attention to my teachers. And I kept that hobby, and I've always been a huge jazz fan, and studying the history of jazz took me to studying the history of Black culture in America, just because of the people that you run into, and you know, you learn about the Harlem Renaissance and how that, you know, facilitated the growth of African American music, and then you learn about Marcus Garvey, and then that took me to learning about Leonard Thomas Howell, who created the Rastafarian movement, and then that took me to learning about Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity, and that took me into learning about Islam. I mean, it just was just like just me being me, and there were some things that happened, and I don't know if you've ever had what I call a fallout, which is where like you wake up on Monday, and by the time you get to Friday, you no longer have a house, a job, a car, a significant other, a pot to piss in, or a window to throw it out of, and you don't know how it all happened, and it happened all so suddenly, you know, like you're just like, hell. And I had one of those moments about 10 years ago, and I'm walking down the road, and the sky just opens up and starts raining on my head. And I just hit that moment of frustration where it was just like, okay, I get it. Whatever it is that I'm doing with my life right now, you're not particularly happy with it. So what I need you to do, because I'm stupid, I'm slow, and I don't do innuendo, and I don't do suggestion, could you just hit me over the head and like shove me in the direction you want me to be going? And about 2 days later, that kick in the face kind of started, and it progressed over the course of a few months, where it started with a perfect stranger who neither me nor my brother-in-law knew or had ever met gave my brother-in-law a ring around in another city, and that ring ended up in my hands, and the ring had the name of Allah and the Shahada in Arabic etched on it. And my brother-in-law, because I collect religious artifacts and trinkets and stuff, I always have, and he gave it to me. And one day I was looking to try to figure out if it had any value, and I dug around online, and I find that it's only made and sold by one distributor in Egypt. It's not sold by any company in America, so that means it had to come to America in somebody's pocket or on somebody's finger,
Sure.
get lost in a parking lot, so a perfect stranger could pick it up and it could end up in my hands. And inside of the ring, you cannot see it. It's actually cast inside the metal, is a little tiny piece of parchment, and it has the words, "God guides those whom he wills," written on it. And it's kind of hard not to take that as a bit of a kick in the face, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And a week later, I was in a mosque for the first time. 2 weeks later, I took my Shahada. And the day I took...
What's a Shahada?
Shahada is a testament of faith. It's basically when you convert to being Muslim. It's when you say before the community that you believe that there's only one God and that Muhammad is a prophet of God.
Okay.
And literally the day I took my Shahada, as I'm leaving the mosque, you have to walk through the kitchen to leave. And there are 2 brothers and 2 sisters are in there, and they're talking to each other about how they're trying to set up a thing called Project Downtown, which is a feed the homeless program that they were trying to set up. And I overheard them, and I stopped, and I was like, well, in Florida, you have to have a health inspection and a license to give food to the homeless, even if it's an unopened bag of potato chips, or they'll throw you in jail. And they were like, well, how do you get that? And I was, oh, it's a simple procedure. You know, you just call the health department. You have somebody that has a food management safety license in the state of Florida that is up to date. They come inspect, and then they just give you a piece of paper that says that you're okay. And they were like, one of them is a doctor, one of them works for an optometrist, the other is a sign language interpreter, and the other is a public defender. None of them have this certification at all. And they're like, well, how do we get that certification? And I was like, well, I have one. And one of the brothers, because I work as a restaurant manager and I worked in a bar. I worked in a bar for years. You have to have that in Florida to be able to do that. So the guy, one of the guys reaches in his pocket, pulls out $300 and hands it to me and says, well, then I guess you should take over the Feed the Homeless program we're trying to set up. Make the phone call, go buy the food. We'll make sure you have donations every week. Here you go. And I walked into a turnkey Feed the Homeless program that was literally waiting for somebody who had the license that I have, that nobody else in the mosque had. I was the only person. And I show up as they're trying to do this. And it's still a successful venture that they're doing today, almost 10 years later. You know, so, I mean, all of that together put me on the path of like, this was something that I was meant to be doing. This was the answer to that. Could you kick me in the face and like shove me in the direction you want to be going? Because I don't do subtle. I'm dense. Make it very clear. And I mean, it's kind of hard to be more clear than I lost my wife. I lost everything I had. And within 4 months, I had everything back, a college career. I mean, it was a completely new life within 2 years.
When you said that you lost your wife, is it like she passed away and then she can't, like, I'm confused as to what happened. I know that at some point you had a problem with immigration and I wanted to talk about that. So is that in reference to that?
No, it was a previous wife. We split up and we got back together, and I became Muslim and she became Muslim because I became Muslim, which is really not a good reason to change something that big about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And within a few months, she was like, I don't want to do this and you do, and so I don't want to be married to you anymore.
Okay.
And so, and I didn't understand at the time, you know, what was going on and how, you know, my life was kind of having this positioning of itself where things were moving around and I didn't realize or understand what was happening. But 6 months later, I had a different wife. We've been married now for almost 9 years. She's supportive of what I do. She does things that no woman would ever do, you know, to try to facilitate the work that we do. So, you know, I'm better. Like, there's just so much in my life that is better than what it was 2 weeks before that little bitty trinket that to anybody else is meaningless. You know, it's just a little silver ring with some scribbling on it, you know. But that little bitty trinket coming into my hand eventually changed so much about my life. I mean, I have a master's degree now. I never in a million years a dream that I would have that 10 years ago. I had no motivations. I had no motivation to make those kind of improvements in myself, you know, 10 years ago. For me, it was, you know, let me work a job that I can, you know, party. For me, that's what it was. It was working in the clubs and doing drugs as much as I could. And there was no, I was offering nothing to society. There was no service. I was just a person who paid taxes and collected a check and did a lot of drugs. Basically.
So why do you think that things turn out so much better? I mean, if you were doing a lot of like you know, you've kind of done the circuit, checking out all these different religions, right? What was it about Islam that was so appealing to you? Like, what do you think that made it so different and successful?
Monotheism, A, but B, the fact that it's a religion that's meant to be understood. Like, it's the only religion that I've found where the religious text specifically says you're allowed to change your mind when presented with new information. Mm-hmm. That you have that the intellect and the use of reason is a gift that God has given us, and to reject the use of that in favor of superstition is something God's not happy with. And that was something that kind of spoke to me, you know, was and seeing a religion as well, that the religious texts specifically state that there are redeeming qualities in other religious traditions outside of themselves. And that was something that I thought was odd and really cool to see, particularly given, you know, the narrative that we're fed about Islam, we're fed about Muslims. To see that when you read their holy text, when you actually sit down and pick the book up and decide, okay, this is a 300-page book, and I'm going to read the book. You know, I'm not going to go find a website that tells me what the book says. I'm going to read this entire book for myself, and I'm going to find out for myself what it says. And then I'm going to go to somebody who practices this religion, and I'm going to ask them, am I understanding this book correctly? You know, I'm not going to go to somebody that has that sells Muslim, shooting range targets and ask him to give me his dissertation on what the Quran says. You know?
Sure.
But that whole idea of, you know, being able to see the validity and the redeeming qualities of other religions. Also, the devotion to family, you know, and this idea that, you know, like for me, I used to do the whole thing with the church where we would go visit the people in nursing homes. And we would sing and we would pair off. And I spent a lot of time doing that in my youth. And it was always something that was really disgusting to me. You know, that we're going and I was meeting people that hadn't seen their children or their grandchildren in 2 to 5, 6, 8 years. Mm-hmm. They'd literally just been dropped off with their Social Security check and left to die. And that you didn't see that in the Muslim world. That's something that is an anathema. That when your children wipe your butt Your parents wiped your butt when you couldn't do it for yourself. And now that they're old, you should be, as their child who had your butt wiped, now you should humble yourself and wipe theirs. And that's.
Do you think that's along religious lines, though? I don't know about all that. Because I think, like, my family's from Poland, right? And, like,
I think
the
it's a
culture in Poland
thing.
is around that, right? You know, like, you're not going to just.
I think it's a cultural thing for American Christianity. You know, that you see the same people in the church who will donate to pay for kids to go sing at the nursing home. They themselves have a mother or a father that is in that home that they dropped there 2 years ago. You know, and that's their effort that they put forth, is that they pay for the gas so that somebody else's kids can go visit their mother. And that this whole, like, the nuclear family, the loss of extended family. You know, like, I live in an extended family household. We have a mother, an aunt, a wife, my wife, I have my kids. We all live here. We all share this house. And we all share those responsibilities of taking care of the kids and getting people to school and taking care of the bills. And we have to navigate a completely different life than the whole the nuclear family, you know, the stereotypical American thing where it's like mom, dad, 2.5 kids, and as soon as you turn 18, get the hell out of my house. You know, we don't have that extended thing that you see basically in every other culture. You know, in Europe they do it, in the Arab countries they do it, in the Asian countries they do it. It's normal for grandmothers and aunts and uncles and all those things to all live together, and, you know, the whole "it takes a village" thing. It's like a voluntary form of familial socialism. It's basically what it is. And the American families lost that completely. And it was something that I saw. This was a community that was trying to reestablish that ideal, you know, here in the States. And that was another thing that kind of attracted me, you know. But that's just one of many, you know, different things, like that I've listed that were attractive to me.
What do you think about arguments made that, okay, so when people talk about immigration, that's a much bigger issue, right? We're talking about what's happening in Europe. We're talking about what's happening in the US. We're talking about it as a moral, like, do borders exist? I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack there. But one of the concerns with people, for example, flooding into Europe is a difference in culture. And in Muslim countries, for example, gay people are like, you know, thumbs down. Women, thumbs down if you step out of line. We're talking about billions, I think, of people around the world. So to make like a judgment about like, oh, all Muslims, all like billion plus are like this is silly. But I do think that based on polls and different reports that I've seen, it does seem that like the Muslim culture is not really like super psyched about gay people, for example. Do you see that as something that's under, like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's something that people should be concerned about when you're accepting new people into a culture? You would hope that they would have a somewhat similar, or at least a tolerant mindset, even if it's not for them. Where do you fall on that concern?
Well, it's kind of a yes and no thing, because you have more than one. You have to look at the community as more than one community. You can't look at the community as a monolith.
The Muslim community, you mean?
Yeah, the Muslim community. What you see, like early immigrant and first-generation Muslim communities are most often conservative. They'll still vote conservative. They won't vote for a Trump, but they'll still vote for like Republicans in local races and stuff like that. The second and third generation Muslim community is extremely liberal, like liberal to the point of, if the imams say, okay, you guys are going too far, you're transgressing the bounds of the religion at this point, you need to dial it back a little bit, they will attack the Muslim scholars. I mean, I've been observing it today on a post where a particularly well-known and renowned Muslim scholar came out and condemned Muslims embracing this leftist rhetoric, particularly on race and racial privilege. And instead of acknowledging the fact this guy is a black, preaching and studying the religion for literally as long as these people that are condemning him have been alive, they're not willing to acknowledge that and humble themselves and realize, like, look, this guy's a scholar. You guys have a degree in conflict resolution. This guy's got 2 master's degrees in Islamic studies and Islamic jurisprudence. I think he knows what he's talking about more than you do.
Right.
You know, so you have to look at the fact that the community is broken into these different groups. It's not a monolith. You see, like Imam Sahib Webb came out, and basically he used an argument very similar to the one that I use on gay marriage, about how traditionally Islam has had no issue with people who aren't Muslim having marriages that are seen as forbidden in Islam, because it's none of our business. If you want to marry somebody that has nothing to do with me or the Muslims, if it's acceptable, this culture accepts gay marriage. Muslims have no opinion. It's none of our business. As long as they're not trying to force imams or mosques to officiate gay wedding ceremonies, Muslims shouldn't have an opinion on it. Well, one of these big name imams comes out and says that publicly, and immediately gets eviscerated by a portion of the community, because it doesn't matter if it's true, and it doesn't matter if it's sound academically. What matters is that emotional connection, you know? So if somebody came out, if say a archaeological evidence came out where Jesus actually did talk about gay people and said that they were just to leave them alone, there would be a portion
of the Christian right people would be like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, even if it was like, you know, a videotape of Jesus like hanging.
So it doesn't matter the amount of evidence that you present these people with about the argument. What matters is they have an emotional connection to their position. And those are the people you have to be worried about, is those people that have that emotional connection to that position, because they didn't come to that position by reason. And reasoning them out of it, it's going to be very difficult. I had a guy, again, like today, I had a guy that attacked me and called me a white supremacist and a racist and all these other things because I did something good for someone who had said hurtful things about Muslims, and in the process of doing that, he had a heart attack. So I thought, you know, there are multiple instances, both by historic Muslims and by Muhammad himself, where he tried to help people, particularly medically. You know, like there's 3 different instances where people that did things like throw garbage or empty chamber pots on Muhammad while he prayed, where he actually sent for doctors for them when they were sick. So I thought, why not teach about my religion by using that example and being it? You know, he hates me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put aside my ability and my right to resent him for that. And I'm going to do a good thing for him to show him that we're all humans here. And there are people that are attacking me that are Muslim for that. And when you remind them that you're not supposed to do that, that the manners that Muslims should treat each other with are different than that, their emotional connection to the fact that I'm white and this guy's white, so it has to be racism, they completely forget about all of those things that their religion teaches them. That's all out the window, and they'll tell you it is. They'll openly admit, I don't care what the religion says here. I don't care what the prophet said about how I should treat you. None of that matters to me. I don't care about any of that. I feel this way, therefore what the religion teaches is immaterial. So we have to realize
that poses quite a challenge.
It does.
Because you can't, you know, I mean, as we kind of barrel closer to, I don't know, some big explosion among us all, like, I don't think that anybody is listening to the other side at all. And you can't even divide anybody along their religious lines, because their religion isn't really dictating, you know, it seems like some of the actions that people are concerned about with Muslims, and like, for example, them not liking gay people or something, that doesn't even seem to be mitigated by keeping out that religion, because it's more of just like whatever, it's just the culture itself. It's not just the religion that's the problem. I don't know, that becomes,
well, like
becomes
you have Malaysia and Indonesia are a good example. They have 2 enormous, thriving, very old transgendered and gay communities. I mean, most people don't realize some of the best drag queens in the world come from Malaysia and Indonesia. They're the best passing, you know, and it's a huge market there. In the last 10 years, though, with the spreading of Salafi ideology, you know, because of the money that the Saudis have to push their views of Islam around the world, that's changing. You're now having public canings for homosexuality in Malaysia, when, you know, you used to be that
you didn't used to have that.
Exactly. But that's something it's changing, because there's outside influence that's making that change. People with money who want that change are influencing that change happening. You know, it almost always goes back to the United States and Saudi Arabia. Those two countries funneling money into these extremist groups, or paying for the school books for extremist schools, subsidizing printing presses, and then telling them, no, you can't print these books, you can only print these books, and oh, we get to go through and edit them before you print them. You know, that kind of stuff is going on. And the average person, hell, the average Muslim, doesn't realize it, because it's not something like, why would you, Tatiana, you're a liberty activist, you're a musician, you're not Muslim, why the hell would you know any of this stuff? Why?
Right.
You're not Muslim. Why would you know? So for you not to know, to me, for you not to know is perfectly valid. It's perfectly reasonable. For you to have preconceptions about my faith because you don't know, because, well, you're not Muslim, it's perfectly valid. You know, I spent 13 years of my life studying Islam academically. That's why I know what I know. The average Muslim doesn't do that. The average Muslim you pass on the street doesn't even know how to wash to pray properly, let alone the finer points of, well, what are the rights guaranteed to Muslims and non-Muslims by Sharia?
Right, but doesn't that kind of, like, okay, so that's an important distinction, but at the end of the day, isn't the general gist that these people, whether united through their religion or through their culture, have a culture that allows for caning of people and stoning of people? Like, I think that is a little disconcerting, especially
well, again,
if they're coming over.
It's a culture that's in flux. You know, this isn't a fixed culture that's existed as this always. It's something that's developed over the course of the last half century. So you need to do more than just be like, okay, well, these people come from this culture. Because what we're finding is most of the time, 90% of the time, at least in America, maybe different in Europe, but at least in America, what happens is these people come here, and 90% of the time, they don't only, they try to hold themselves to a higher standard than the social contract around them. There's actually a big name imam who he expressed that. You know, he said, what he said was that to the Muslim, American law should mean nothing. That's not the standard we should be holding ourselves to. American law is here. The standard Muslims should hold ourselves to is up here. We should be going.
That law can be.
We should be doing better. We should be doing better. We should be holding ourselves to a higher standard. And that was then taken and misconstrued as Muslims should try to replace American law with Sharia. When what he was saying was, no, we should hold ourselves to a higher standard of moral character than our neighbors do. If here in America, it's the presumption of innocence beyond reasonable doubt. In Sharia, it's beyond all doubt, reasonable or not. So, you get what I'm saying? It's a higher standard, and Muslims should take that higher standard. We shouldn't settle for only being good enough. We shouldn't settle for just being law-abiding.
Are you allowed by Muslim law to be gay? What is the official stance?
The argument is that everybody has their own trials and tribulations. Like for me, it's smoking. Cigarettes for me, it's a really big issue. It's a really big trial for me. And for other people, it's womanizing, you know, or for other people, you know, there was a member of the Sahaba, the people that knew Muhammad, who was an alcoholic when he met Muhammad. He became Muslim, and he was still an alcoholic when Muhammad died. That was his struggle, was to struggle with that. And for some people, their struggle is homosexuality.
But then that's implying that homosexuality is wrong. Maybe some people don't think that it's wrong. From the current Islamic standpoint, morally, it is wrong. Right, so isn't that a problem when people come to a country where they don't view that way? Like the U.S. is super into gay people. We're like all about the rights.
That's not really Well, there's a difference in having in somebody having rights and something being morally, someone viewing something as morally wrong. That's like saying that Europeans can't come. We can't let Russians move here because homosexuality is viewed very negatively in Russia. You know, we're not going to turn people from European countries that have a negative view of homosexuality away because of the fact that their culture views it as inappropriate. All Christians believe homosexuality is a sin. It's right there in the book. You know, it's something that is believed. We're not going to turn Christians away because they believe homosexuality is a sin. The difference is, do you believe that you yourself or the state have the right to use violence against people for what you consider sinful?
Well, I think some people would posit, I'm sure you would disagree, that Islam does call for that, you know, kill the infidel, blah, blah, blah. I mean, what do you think about those concerns? Or do you think that, I mean, I guess it doesn't even matter if people really have a good understanding of the book. I guess from your interpretation of the book, is that kill the infidel a point of concern? And then on a more practical level, is it a point of concern?
Well, there is no, well, first of all, there's no text that says anything about kill the infidel. Infidel is a term that means someone who doesn't believe in Catholicism. The term that you're thinking, Islam? No. Infidel is a term that means someone who doesn't believe in Catholicism. The term infidel does not exist in the Quran anywhere in any context.
Okay.
The word you're thinking that is mistranslated by people for that purpose is kufar, and kufar is a verb. It requires action. You have to actively seek to suppress Muslims. You can't just not be Muslim. Not being Muslim and having a peaceful or a neutral relationship with Muslims means, okay, you're not Muslim. You become kufar or kufr when you actually go out of your way to prevent Muslims from practicing their faith, when you try to stop Muslims from building a mosque, when you try to prevent Muslims from being able to pray, when you try to do something that comes between a Muslim and their ability to access the divine. There's a difference between the two. Muslims can be kufr. There are Muslims that are, it's not a hard thing to be kufr. All you have to do is go out and lie about what Islam teaches. If you misrepresent Islam and what Islam teaches, that's considered hiding the truth or fighting against the truth, because you are openly misrepresenting the facts about the faith. So that's an act of kufr. And the same as attempting to stop me from praying is an act of kufr. It takes action. You have to do something. And simply believing in a different religion is... Hello? Hello? You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I lost you for a second.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll edit that out in the other thing. But yeah, I totally lost you. Okay, so I'm assuming that you don't okay, so why do you think that there's so many radicalized Muslim people? Is it because of the U.S. and the Saudi involvement, that we've been going around bombing the hell out of the Middle East for 100 years?
It's a number of things. I mean, it's more than one thing. You can't just say, oh, well, it's just this. This one thing is what caused it. Because you have, of course, the foreign meddling, particularly the putting Saudi Arabia in charge of Mecca and Medina. Their sect, their viewpoints on Islam were peripheral. They were like the alt-right of Muslims. And the Brits were like, oh, they'll be useful. Let's give them money and weapons, and we'll put them in control of like the most important piece of land in Islam. And so that has something to do with it. Then you also have, you had a number of democratic nations across the Middle East that are now despot nations, and that's because America, the United Kingdom, France, they didn't like the fact that democratically elected governments are harder to control than a despot that you have in your back pocket. You give a despot some money, he does what you say. Democratically elected governments don't usually work that way. They're representative. The people are going to say what decisions get made, and if the government favors a foreign country more than their own people, then they'll be voted out of office. So when you have these democratically elected governments that did just that, they got out of pocket and decided they didn't want to be satellites of Western nations anymore. We overthrew those governments, and okay, I lost everybody at this point. Hello.
Hey, Will, just a second. We'll have you in a. I think Tatiana's coming back. Sorry.
Okay.
We're still live, so keep that in mind.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
we're
audio will
live?
edit this out, but.
Oh, we're live?
Well, it's going out there.
Broadcasting
There's
live?
nobody really watching. Don't worry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Should I just? I mean,
yeah, just hang tight for a second, and we'll.
Cool.
Okay, here's Tatiana.
There she is. Woohoo!
Oh, finally. I kept talking and trying to kill time, but anyway, we're back, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, yeah,
okay.
you can continue. I'll go back out.
Yeah, where did we lose each other at? Because I was on and talking, and I was still on with Liberty.me, but you were gone. And...
No, I was talking. I was telling everybody about my upcoming shows. I guess what is the reason for the radicalization? And it is a multi-pronged thing. So obviously we're dealing with a lot of I mean, in my view, it's a lot of blowback, right? But
well, you've got you have PTSD, which you have to admit affects rationale, it affects decision making, it affects you socially for the rest of your life. And we have people who, like, this is a generational PTSD at this point. You know, this is an area of the world that first it was the revolutions trying to gain their freedom from colonial powers. And then it became the nationalists versus the theocrats. And then it became the nationalists again versus Western nations again. And it's just, it's generational violence and bombing and all of these things that have been going on that you have to, it has to affect people. It has to affect societies and cultures to have these kind of things happen on a generational basis. You know, to grow up in a war zone, to grow up wondering if your house is going to be the next house that bomb falls on, or to walk out in your, you know, in your front yard and see your neighbors in bits and pieces all across the street in front of your house. Like, that has to affect people, and it has to affect societies and cultures. So you've got that at play. Then you have the Saudis. They've come in and they subsidize mosques. They subsidize schools, because all of that upheaval creates economic depression. So now all these printing presses, all these schools, these houses of worship, they're all about to go under, because all of this economic upheaval, because of all the war and the military upheaval. So here comes here comes Saudi Arabia to save the day with all their oil wealth. And then they pump their money into these institutions, and now that they've taken their money, now they're beholden. Now Saudi gets to pick which books you get to translate and publish. And Saudi wants control of the translations. I mean, there's a documentary called Inside the Quran that PBS did, and they spelled Quran with a K, where they actually go through and they show where Saudi Arabian owned printing presses add context that doesn't appear in the original Arabic. They'll add the word Christian and Jew to passages it's not in the original language.
Wow, that's wild.
It's because they know that the average person in America that's reading that book doesn't know how to read the Arabic, so they don't know the difference. You don't know the difference.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting factor,
and
for sure.
It's so pervasive. I've got translations in there on my shelf that, like, I would never suggest someone actually read them. You know, it's nice to have it on my shelf, and I wasted, you know, $117 buying it. You know, a whole series of books, and then get it home and read it, and it's like, this is, you know, and it's counter-imposed with the Arabic, so you can see the Arabic while you're reading the English. And if you know how to understand that, and you read this, and you see that they don't say the same thing, it's like, okay, well, it's a nice thing to sit on my shelf. But as far as reading it for real information, I would never give it to an English speaker to learn. Purposefully mistranslated. There's context that's added that has nothing, that is nowhere in the original text. And so you have that going on. You know, so you've got then you've got generational resentment. You know, these are people that the resources in their countries have been destroyed, which has created economic upheaval. They know that the CIA or other Western groups have helped topple, you know, the governments in their country 20 years ago, 50 years ago. You know, so all of this stuff, you have to put all that together. You know, you can't just say, oh, well, it's blowback. Because blowback's just one part of this huge equation. You know, it's like a beautiful mind. You know, like it's all these different things written on the blackboard that brought us.
Well, I think that you can look at
now.
that. Well, you can look at that same prism of what happened down in Charlottesburg. Was it Charlottesburg or Ville?
Yep.
I think it's Burg.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, I have been seeing people saying, this is Trump's fault. And I'm like, whoa there, Nelly. I don't think it's just Trump. I mean, maybe Trump is
going on for,
It's like, holy cannoli. There's just so many factors at play. It's so disturbing and it's so difficult to talk about. I imagine that the Middle East is very similar. I mean,
well, imagine,
I really don't know what to make of it, to be honest.
If America stays on the trajectory, imagine if America stays on the trajectory that it's at right now, and we continue to have presidents that facilitate it, because that's what these dictators do. They purposefully facilitate the division because it keeps them in power.
Sure.
So imagine America after 100 years. How much do you think it'll look like the Middle East? Because that's what we have. The Middle East today is the product of 100 years of what's going on here in America. Nationalists fighting communists, fighting socialists, fighting theocrats, fighting regular people. And that,
man, we're screwed.
You know, so if we stay exactly as we are right now for the next 100 years, we will be the Middle East. We will be the Middle East.
So then how do we stop it? What do we do? Any tips? I mean, we've been talking for a while, and I kind of wanted to ask you, actually, before we think of solutions, really quickly, I found it very interesting what you said at PorcFest about the immigration difficulties that you had with your wife. Can you quickly kind of summarize your thoughts on that? Because when people think about immigration, they think, oh, they're getting the goodies, which I am one of those people. I don't like to incentivize people to come here and give them goodies. But it's not as black and white as that. And I have very good friends that are trying to immigrate from other countries. They're spending tons and tons and tons of money on attorneys and, you know, going back and trying to do things above board, and they're running into roadblock after roadblock. So I think it's a little bit more complex. Maybe you could share your story with me.
Well, first, the immigrants don't qualify for goodies. That's something that they make clear to you. Every single time you go to the immigration office, they reiterate that fact, just to make sure you haven't forgotten since the last time you got there, that you do not qualify for HUD, food stamps, financial aid, subsidized or unsubsidized Stratford student loans. There's like a whole list of things that they read off to you every time you go to the immigration office, so that you don't waste your time and try to apply for it, because you are not eligible for government subsidy as an immigrant. It cost my family $8,000, 8 years of having our life pried through, of having government agents tell me that having 5 children together doesn't mean that we're serious about our marriage. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what 5 children indicates. Like, do you need like 7 in order to really make the cut? Like, I don't even get it, but okay.
Plus, like, we did fingerprints that we had to drive to Atlanta for 4 different times. We had to pay $300 every time. Multiple doctor's appointments at government contracted doctor's offices that for a physical costs over $300. Every time you file a piece of paperwork, basically, you pay the government a fee to file the paperwork, and then you pay 2 government contracted entities to interact with them every time you file something. So, I mean, it's not just the filing fees for government filing that rack up. It's these other things that are on the side, these peripheral things like, oh, you filed this paperwork. It means you got to drive to Atlanta and get your fingerprints done. and you got to be there at 7 a.m. So that means you got to go there the day before and get a hotel room.
Sure.
And
the time.
Take time off work. Oh, they want to see more pictures of you and your kids together, and the insurance policy that you and your wife had together lapsed because you couldn't afford to pay for it. So, because, you know, I couldn't afford to pay health insurance after Obamacare. So since that lapsed, we need you to come back and validate that you're married still and that you're not faking it again. So you need to drive to Memphis, 8 hours away, so that you can be in our office at 7 o'clock in the morning and bring pictures and bring stuff that shows that you're, you know, even though you haven't moved and nothing's changed in any way, bring us all these documents that we already have on copy by this point in triplicate, so that we can verify that they're real again. You know, and all those expenses to go along with it. Plus, you know, my wife being followed around when she first got here, like they thought she was a member of Al Qaeda, when her father is a two-time Olympic gold medalist who used to guard President Bill Clinton and Tony Blair with his private security firm when they were in office. It's like there's
Do
no
some research, guys.
For real, yo. It's like there's no reasoning or rationale to it at all. And I just think that any system that's built upon that kind of a thing is oppressive by nature. You're literally saying, if you want access to the American dream, you have to pay for it. Pay for it. The government will give you access to prosperity, but only if you give the government 10 grand first.
Right.
Because you can skip the whole process. Most people don't realize that. For $250,000, you can give that money straight to the government and skip the whole process, get your green card right away.
Oh, I heard about that with China. Like, that's how the Chinese are getting in. They're like buying things and spending a certain amount of money, and then they're allowed into the country. That's wild.
You can buy a green card and bypass all the security stuff, all that kind of stuff, and just get the green card. Now, if the terrorists are as well funded as we're told that they are, why don't they just do that?
I mean, I think the whole thing is not like, I mean, I think that there's a lot of malarkey going around about the terrorists. It's really difficult when you see different kinds of attacks and to not see the inadvertent results and wonder if they were intended in the first place. You know what I mean?
One
like
of the things you have to put, like, put the lines together.
What I mean, look how stringent they were with your wife, right? They, you know, but they can't be more stringent with some of the wackadoos roaming around. I mean, I think it doesn't really add up. What is the goal of Muslims for Liberty? And like, to kind of wrap things more on a positive note, what are some ways that people can help and like raise awareness that it's not just a bunch of Muslim people that are like, you know,
well, we're an education.
I mean, how do you bridge the gap, right?
We're an educational outfit, you know, first and foremost. So what we do is we go out and we educate people. You know, we try to educate non-Muslims about some of the misconceptions that they may have, and then we also go out and we educate Muslims about their forgotten legacy in the evolution of the concept of freedom. You know, we talk to them about how, you know, long before John Locke was a person or existed, Islam's legal system had a list of inalienable rights that all people had, regardless of race, creed, religion, color. None of that mattered. These are things that you have because God gave you life. And trying to reintroduce Muslim communities here in the U.S. and abroad to those ideas. I mean, we've got a Muslim think tank in Pakistan now. You've got a Muslim think tank in Malaysia now. Another one in Indonesia. You've got a thriving alternative currency and economic civil disobedience movement in Indonesia and Malaysia. You've got, we're setting up the first libertarian think tank in Nigeria this year. Like, we're working on that right now with libertarian, Black Muslim libertarians who want their own think tank. They're tired of not being heard, you know, and we're doing that kind of stuff all over the globe. So, you know, you're welcome to donate to Muslims for Liberty and the work that we do. Or if you find other groups overseas that are trying to get this work done besides us, donate to Prime. You know, donate to the as yet named Nigerian libertarian efforts. You know, get out there and try to help these people in any way you can. We're working right now. Some libertarians donated us a piece of property. We're about to move to Keene, New Hampshire, inshallah, and open it'll be the first libertarian-run mosque in the country. I mean, it'll be a mosque that was literally created by cooperative and collaborative effort of the Muslim and liberty communities. It'll be an interfaith and intra-faith center, so there won't be any sectarianism allowed. We're going to do the local Quaker and the local Jewish communities when we're not using it, so that it will be a place for those people to worship as well. We're working on putting together like a warming station for the local homeless and a place where they can come print resumes, make resumes, that kind of stuff. And it's all because, you know, this kind of confluence of values of voluntarily helping your neighbor and doing what's good and doing what's right. And if you want to support that, you're welcome to go to launchgood.com. Just Google New Hampshire on launchgood.com and we'll pop right up. But that's the kind of stuff that we're doing right now. You know, we're trying. I don't like libertarians that talk a lot. I mean, there's so many of us out there, so many think pieces and think tanks and studies and all this other, and it's not getting us anywhere. I want libertarians who do stuff. I want libertarians who have like what I call dirty hands. And, you know, we're going to create a mosque, an interfaith center, basically to be that example to liberty and Muslim folks all around the world that it does a lot better when you actually get out here and just do this stuff. Mm-hmm. Stop talking about it. Stop, oh, well, the homeless are cold. Then give them a place to warm up. Oh, well, these people need a place. Then give them a place to do that. Stop talking about it and put your heart and put your hands into action, because until that, look around you. This is the world of the think tank and the talking head. This is what the talking head and changing things through running our mouth and talking at each other brings you, is Charlottesville. Talking at each other and not having action and humanity and actual human action with each other. It brings us Charlottesville. So let's stop yelling at each other. Let's stop talking past each other. Let's start coming together around confluence of values and worry about those other details and the minutia later. Let's do good things and bring the country back together. And we can argue about, oh, should we put this statue in somebody's house or in a museum? You know, it has nothing to do with anything. We have real problems in this country. Now let's come together as people and do human things for human beings and to each other. And that's what Muslims for Liberty has always been about, is trying to be that example. You know, we go and we feed libertarians. We go and we talk at not be welcome at. We'll go and feed people for free at events that we may not be welcome at, because that's what you do. Somebody has to be the one that says, I'm not willing to allow resentment to control my actions. I'm going to be the bigger person. I'm going to be the first one to put that hand out there. And if you support that work, please go to launchgood.com and support our efforts. Go to Muslims for Liberty, Muslims, the number 4, liberty.org, or check us out on Facebook, or check us out on LRN.FM at 10 p.m. on Sunday nights on the Call to Freedom on our radio show, where we take our ideas and try to push them out there by bringing libertarian activists and Muslim activists that work on similar projects together so that they can brainstorm on air for everybody to hear.
I like it. I think that's some of the most reasonable stuff I've heard today on the cesspool of Facebook. Holy cannoli, I gotta stay off that place.
Yeah. Yeah. Facebook is awful today and every other day.
Yeah, I've really been kind of getting really sick of it, and it's also so difficult, you know, to get unbiased news, because if it's not biased from one side, it's biased from the other side. And I just want to hear the facts, ma'am. And it's hard to, for me, it almost distances me from the situation, because I can't tell what really happened. And so it makes me almost less sympathetic to the whole thing overall. And not because I'm like a bad person, I don't care, but because it's like, holy cannoli, what's going on there? I don't know. All right, I'm out of here. Because it's become almost a full-time job trying to research which news outlets are reporting things accurately or not.
And it's everything. Pick an issue. It's the same on every issue. Syria, totally. Terrorism, gay marriage, every issue. It's the same thing.
Yeah, it's become quite disturbing, because I think that like what happened in Charlottesville is going to force both groups to dig in their heels more. you know, both sides feel like they got screwed over. I don't know. I think there's a lot of government planting going on, which I think makes it like more difficult, because then people have a right to be upset, but they're just pissed at the wrong person, you know? So I guess that's also the objective. Hopefully we'll get some better news from world news. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. Everybody, Muslimsforliberty.com, no, .org. And where can they listen to the program? On
you can go on
Sunday
LRA.
nights?
Yeah, Sunday nights 10 p.m. or 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. on Tuesday. So that's competing with you.
Okay, that's okay. I don't always do my show.
What's a recast? We recast what they do on Tuesday nights, and I've got some guys that are working on trying to get like a YouTube channel put together for us too. I'm a technological illiterate person.
Don't worry, YouTube sucks anyway. They don't let anybody get through. You know, that stupid Alex Jones song, which I've been obsessed with all week long. They were up to like 2 million views like a day in, and then all of a sudden it stagnated. Apparently it went up to 7 million views, and then all of a sudden they clamp it down. I was looking at another person, they had like 650,000 subscribers, and their video had like 20,000 views. I'm like, something is wrong.
Right.
With YouTube. So that's, you know, it leaves opportunities for cryptocurrency solutions. So you know me, I'm always about the crypto. Forget this whole government nonsense.
And we're for the Malik Center in cryptocurrency as well. Our goal is to try to raise about 10% of our total budget in cryptocurrencies.
Very cool. Well, I love it. I'll be donating. And thank you very much for coming on the show today. Thanks everybody for checking in. Make sure you go to the Michael Edwards freedomfund.com for Kingsley's father. Make sure you sign the petition, spread the word. Even a little tweet is helpful. And thanks again, Will, for coming on. We'll be back in a couple weeks. I don't know when, but soon. In September, you guys will definitely see me. So thanks for checking in, and peace, everybody. More now than ever. Later.